Hello everyone, and welcome to round 15 of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal tournament. It's Bobby Fischer against Cuban international master Eleazar Jimenez Zerquera. Now, before we talk about this matchup a bit and show you the game, Fischer had an excellent start to the tournament. Then he had 4 draws and a loss against Bent Larsen, and then he got back on track on the on his winning streak, beating Efim Geller, Borislav Ivkov, and in last game in round number 14, Dragoljub Minic. So now he faces a strong Cuban international master. Before this game, they already played 3 times, and I believe the result is they drew 2 games, and 1 game was won by Fischer. So this is game number 4 so far, and it's a very interesting game. And we also do have a nice photo of this matchup, but before that I prepared a nice photo challenge, and it's going to be a bit difficult for many of you, as it's not a chess player. It's actually a Texas Hold'em player, but he has been promoting a lot of chess lately on Twitter and been playing a lot of chess, so I thought, as I myself am a big Texas Hold'em fan, it would be a nice idea. So here it is. Best of luck to everyone. Who is the gentleman in the photo here? So there you have it. Good luck to everyone, and we do have a photo of Bobby Fischer playing against Eleazar Zerquera, but it's not a photo of this encounter. I found this on a website that says that this is a photo of Fischer versus Zerquera of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal tournament, but as you can see in this photo, Fischer has the black pieces, whereas in the game that I will show you, Fischer has the white pieces. So this could not be the game from 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal tournament. Rather, I'm pretty sure this is from 1965 Havana tournament. But okay, regardless, we do have a nice photo of them. Now let's check out the game. So Fischer has the white pieces, and he opens with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, the Ruy Lopez. a6, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, knight to f6, castles, we have bishop to e7, all standard stuff here, rook e1, d6, c3, castles, and Fischer goes for d4 immediately. E captures on d4, c captures on d4, and the d5 now. Sort of wasting a tempo, but as it seems, it should be okay for black. e5, Fischer advances his pawn. We have knight to e4, and now knight to c3. Zerquera captures, knight captures, pawn captures, and here you have to decide what to play. As you can see, Fischer has a very nice pawn chain in the center, c3, d4, e5, and he also has a bishop pair, but black also has a bishop pair. So all in all, it's a pretty equal position. White center makes it a bit more pleasant to play, as he controls more space, and black will eventually try to undermine the center via c5 or maybe even f6 if possible. So first, developing pieces, bishop to f5, and it's a very nice square for the bishop. Also later, bishop to g6 will be possible, and it prevents Fischer from developing this rook to a nice semi-open b file. And while here you could consider a lot of moves, like if you really want to play rook to b1, you could consider bishop to c2, simply counter the bishop on f5, as it is a very nice piece on f5. You could consider something like h3, queen to e2, simply developing, bishop to e3, but Fischer goes for the immediate bishop captures on c6. Let's see how this plays out for him. B captures on c6, and now queen to a4, simply going for the doubled c6 pawn. We have c5, advancing and attacking Fischer's pawn center, and here Fischer plays d captures on c5. A very nice idea, ruining his pawn center, but he does have an idea why he did it. We have bishop captures on c5, and now bishop to a3. Queen to e7, bishop captures on c5, queen captures on c5, and now knight to d4, attacking this bishop on f5. Here Zerquera defends it. We have bishop to g6, and now comes queen to c6. Fischer offers a trade of queens, rather he forces a trade of queens. Any retreat of the queen will be met with white simply developing and then grabbing the c7 pawn. So queen captures on c6, knight captures on c6, and now rook f to e8. Here Fischer simply moves the knight back to b4, attacking the d5 pawn, but also pressuring the a6 pawn. So what do you do here? It's a very nice idea. Of course, you cannot defend the pawn via this rook, because this rook has to keep an eye on the a6 pawn. And if you try something like rook e to d8, then you get rook a to d1, and now you see that there's really no good way to defend it. So here Eleazar finds a very nice idea. He plays c6, defending the d5 pawn with the c6 pawn and offering the c6 pawn. And as it is the best move to play in this position, Fischer captures it. We have knight captures on c6, and only now rook 8 to c8, attacking Fischer's knight. So if the knight moves, the c3 pawn will be lost. But all is well, as Fischer goes knight to b4, now with an attack against the e6 pawn. Rook captures on c3, and now first knight captures on d5. If knight captures on a6, then black can immediately start pushing his past d pawn. So instead, after rook c3, first better is to capture the d pawn and then deal with the a6 pawn later. We have rook to a3. We have now f4, defending the e5 pawn, and now comes h5. Fischer would, of course, enjoy playing g4 and f5, trapping black's bishop, so black prevents any kingside expansion. We have knight to e3, now also preparing to push f5, so bishop to d3. Rook 8 to d1, pressuring the bishop, so now rook captures on a2 is not possible, and rook to b8. Rook to d2, adding further protection to the a2 pawn. Rook to b1, attacking Fischer's e1 rook, and now comes king to f2. Rook captures on e1, king captures on e1, and now comes bishop to b1 with a double attack against the a2 pawn. So although Fischer is up a pawn, Eleazar really made a nice calculation with that c6 move defending d5 that he will have, that his pieces will enjoy enough activity to counter Fischer's extra pawn. So Fischer knows that there's no way to actually protect the a2 pawn, you do have to make the best of it. So he goes rook to d8, check, king to h7, and now comes king to f2. And what do you do here? Do you capture with the rook or with the bishop? Well, both is fine. In the game, Eleazar captures with the bishop as it immediately defends the f7 pawn. So we have f5 here. Fischer is preparing to push, to at some point push e6 and hopefully create a nice passed pawn. We have rook to a5 attacking Fischer's e5 pawn, and here comes rook to e8 defending it. Rook to b5, now Eleazar makes room for his own passed pawn to start pushing it, and here Fischer plays king to f3. It's very interesting. There's if you try and push immediately to create a passed pawn, then this is a forced drawn line, as after pawn captures rook e5 with a double attack against the e6 pawn, you push e7, now comes bishop to f7. You force the rook away from the defense of the e7 pawn, rook a8, rook captures, and now it's 2 pawns each on the king side, a knight against a bishop and 2 rooks, so completely equal endgame. So at rook to b5, Fischer tries to improve, king to f3, and a5, Eleazar starts pushing his own passed pawn. King to f4, we have a4, simply continuing to push the pawn, rook to a8, again we see the same theme over and over, you have to put a rook behind the passed pawn. So we have rook to b4, defending the pawn, this comes with check, king to f3, king to g5 is also an idea, perhaps, you just want to advance the king further, but then rook to e4 comes, and then your e5 pawn is attacked, and also your knight on e3 is attacked, so it will be actually black who will profit from this. So rook to b4, we have king to f3, now comes bishop to b3, protecting the a4 pawn, so now the rook can move. Fischer goes h3, and now comes rook to b5, attacking Fischer's e5 pawn. And as you can see, the bishop here is guarding c4, the pawn here is guarding g4, so there is no way for Fischer to defend the e5 pawn with the knight. The only way to defend it is king to e4 or king to f4, so Fischer defends the king to f4, and now rook to b4 check once again. And as we've seen, king g5 is impossible, so Fischer goes back, king to f3, and here rook to b5, attacking the e5 pawn, and as black is somewhat better in this position, but he's perfectly satisfied with a draw, he does not want to push. Instead of rook b5, he could perhaps play g6, keep his options open, and try to go for something more than half a point here. But Cuban international master Eleazar Jimenez Zerquera is satisfied with a draw against Bobby Fischer with the black pieces, so instead he doesn't push for anything, rook b5, and it was in this position that they agreed to a draw. So a very nice game from both of them, and it's very interesting. It's not all that clear both of them. That's why I use this quote above the board. My opponents make good moves too. Sometimes I don't take these things into consideration. as this game was played very nicely by black, and there was no way to push for anything more here with the white pieces. Perhaps, after this bishop to f5 move was played, maybe bishop captures on c6 was too forcing, and it allowed black to go into a simplified position, perhaps too quickly, maybe continuing the game with the moves we suggested, bishop c2 or maybe h3, queen e2, would have given white, more chances to complicate. But, Fischer often preferred this bishop captures on c6 move in the Ruy Lopez. So, if his opponents defended really well, which was the case here, then the game was drawn. So yeah, after this rook to b5 move, the game was drawn, and this is how round 15 of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal tournament went for Bobby Fischer. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it, and that you're enjoying the coverage of the Bobby Fischer series so far. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I do have a question for the end of this video for you. I don't know if any of you are still using MySpace, but I've been trying to listen to one song on MySpace. It's a song my friend uploaded, and whenever I hit the play button, the song just doesn't play. I mean, there's no good reason I can think of for this, but it just doesn't. So if you have any idea about this, feel free to share it in the comments. And also one, sort of a notification or an announcement. I'm considering participating in an open tournament. So if you have any interesting open tournaments in mind, also do share in the comments, so I have more of them to consider from, if that's something you would enjoy, of course. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.